I've tried every note-taking method that you can possibly imagine. From the classic approach of writing everything down in notebooks, to using various apps in hierarchical folder structures. From more modern systems like bullet journaling, Cornell method, or Tiago Forte's para method. But no matter how hard I tried, something always felt off. Instead of generating new ideas, my notes were collecting dust. A couple of weeks ago, I decided to try a note-taking method that changed everything for me, the Zettelkasten method. In this video, I'm going to share why Zettelkasten is the perfect method if you want to actually use your notes to generate information, retain information more effectively, turn learning and note-taking into a creative process. Whether you're a student, a writer, or a knowledge worker, or just someone who tries to make sense of all the knowledge you've gathered, this method might change the way you think. The Zettelkasten is a note-taking system that is designed to help you organize and connect ideas, so that you can think deeply and create meaningful work. It was developed by Nicholas Luhmann, a sociologist who credited the system for his ability to publish over 70 books in 400 academic papers. The core idea is simple. Instead of collecting information, you write short atomic notes, self-contained notes that focus on a single idea. The notes are stored in a way that you can link them together. Over time, this network will grow and you will see interesting connections, patterns, and generate new ideas. Let's talk about types of notes that you will create when using Zettelkasten. The first type is fleeting notes. These are quick temporary notes that you capture when you have thoughts, ideas, or observations. Fleeting notes are unstructured. You can think of it as an inbox. It's a place where you can put everything that comes to your mind without worrying about organization. Fleeting notes are meant to be processed later, so after you use them in your permanent notes, you can't delete them. The second type is literature notes. These notes focus on summarizing information that you get from books, articles, podcasts, and other type of content that you consume. They're concise and they highlight the main idea of the content. What's important about literature notes is not just copy-pasting information, but writing it in your own words. Thus, you will better memorize and understand the material. The point of literature notes is to extract the main idea and to use them in your future notes. And the third type is permanent notes. Permanent notes are the foundation of your Zettelkasten, and you will use them to create connections. They contain developed ideas written in complete sentences. They are meant to be standalone, which means that if somebody doesn't have a context, they can open that note and understand what you're talking about. When creating connections in your Zettelkasten, you will always use your permanent notes, so make sure your notes are clear and concise. The Zettelkasten system is really good at mimicking the way the human brain works. Because when you think of our brain, it generates ideas, it connects them, and it has associations. It's not like you put every idea in folders and they are isolated from each other. So Zettelkasten might be the perfect choice for those who want to have a second brain. I've been struggling to find the perfect note-taking system for years. I've used Notion for a while, but I left it with a heavy heart because it felt more distracting than productive. I've tried a lot of note-taking apps, and in the end I settled for Apple Notes because I was tired of constantly searching for a new app and I just wanted something fast and simple. And honestly, I still feel like Apple Notes is a pretty good option for anyone who wants to take notes. I truly believe that note-taking should be simple and your app doesn't really matter as long as it works for you. Over time, I've realized that there's a bigger problem than finding the perfect note-taking app. It's finding the right note-taking method. When I finally decided that I'm gonna stick to Apple Notes, another problem became glaringly obvious. What happens to your notes after you take them? Do you actually use them? Can you find ideas easily when you need them? Or do they just sit there collecting dust? This was my reality. I was taking a lot of notes, and I only returned to them when I needed them. And when I saw a huge blocks of text, the last thing I wanted to do was to read them. It wasn't because my notes are boring or because they are organized in a bad way. Actually, my notes were quite organized. The problem was that my notes were isolated from each other. I could never see connections between them. Seeing huge blocks of text when I was searching for ideas was overwhelming to say the least. No matter how I tried to take my notes, they still felt chaotic and unusable. And then there's a very serious issue of folders. Notes get buried in folders and they only resurface when you're trying to find them through search. But let's be real, if you have hundreds and thousands of notes, will you really search every folder to discover ideas? Besides, the more notes you take, the more chaotic and crowded your folders will be. So this whole system will collapse under its own weight with time. What's the point of note-taking if you never return to them? What's the point of collecting information if it never gets used or recycled into something meaningful? For years, I thought that simply by taking notes and storing them somewhere, I would remember everything and I would become really smart. In reality, it's not how things work. As it turns out, collecting information is quite pointless unless you do something meaningful with it. And to do that, you need a good system that will allow you to revisit your notes, connect them, and generate meaningful ideas. Our current approach from note-taking isolates ideas from each other. Your notes are never connected to each other, so you never know where the overlap is. And that's the opposite of how our brains work. When you think about a concept, your brain immediately makes connections. Similar ideas, opposing ideas, related books, or even random associations. That's the magic of thinking, but when your notes are locked in folders and buried under the pile of text, that magic disappears. That realization pushed me to search for something new, and I discovered the Zettelkasten method. I've heard about Zettelkasten for years from different YouTubers, but it never quite clicked for me. Everyone seemed to have their own version of it, so it was very confusing. Out of desperation, I decided to read a book, How to Take Smart Notes, and that book changed my view on note-taking completely. To my surprise, the book was incredibly practical and insightful. It taught me the basics of Zettelkasten, and after reading it, I didn't have any questions. I just downloaded Obsidian and I started using it. As someone who enjoys digital tools, I decided to give it a go and choose Obsidian as my note-taking app. In my opinion, if you want to use Zettelkasten, Obsidian is one of the best apps on the market right now. It connects ideas easily, and the app itself is pretty simple. I didn't transfer all of my notes, of course, because I have hundreds of them. I didn't want to commit too much. I was just trying to experiment. I took notes on the books that I was reading at the moment and connecting ideas to each other. And let me tell you, it was a game changer. For the first time in my life, I could see the benefits of connecting ideas together. Short atomic notes made all the difference. Instead of massive blocks of text, I had a bite-sized information that I could easily manage and connect. And the connections themselves? It's absolutely mind-blowing. Concepts I thought were unrelated suddenly clicked together in ways I'd never imagined. For the first time in my life, I felt no need to reread the book for the second time because I knew that I've extracted every piece of information that I might possibly need in the future. That's what it means to truly use your notes. I realized that the reason why Zettelkasten didn't work for me in the past was because I ignored the concept of atomic notes. I tried to connect huge blocks of text to each other and it never made sense. The Zettelkasten method isn't about creating a personal Wikipedia with random hyperlinks. It's about creating a system where you collect information that is relevant to your project, to your thinking and your learning. This experience completely changed the way I view note-taking. My notes aren't static blocks of text. They are dynamic, they are interconnected, and they are bursting with potential. Every note I take feels valuable because I know I will use it someday. Each note that I add makes my Obsidian vault more and more valuable. For the first time in my life, I'm excited about taking notes. I don't do it just because I can or I should. I do it because it's fun. Zettelkasten has completely transformed the way I learn and consume content. These past couple of weeks were extremely productive for me because I was reading a lot of books, watching a lot of content, and extracting valuable information. And I know that I will use this information in the future because of the way I organize it. No wonder how Nicholas Luhmann ended up with 90,000 notes. He wasn't grinding or forcing himself to do it. He was just exploring areas that he was interested in. That's the power of the Zettelkasten method. It makes learning addictive and it turns note-taking into a creative process. I know that I've made a video about Apple Notes in the past, claiming that it was the best note-taking app that you can possibly find, but I now realize that it's much more important to have a proper note-taking system. Note-taking systems are much more important than having an app that you like. Of course, it would be better to combine the two, but if you have to choose, I would say find the perfect note-taking method and then you can find the perfect app for that. Don't get me wrong, I still use Apple Notes and I really love it. I use it as an inbox for my ideas, but I find that Obsidian is much better for Zettelkasten than Apple Notes. If you ever feel that your notes are just collecting dust, maybe it's time to rethink your system. Because the point of note-taking is not to just collect information, it's to create something meaningful with it. If this video inspired you to try out Zettelkasten, here's a couple of tips that you can use to make this transition as seamless and easy as possible. The first thing that you have to do is to find an app of choice. Download something simple, don't overthink it, and find something that will work for you. I personally enjoy Obsidian for that because of the graph view, but you can go with something else. I know that you might be very excited to use Zettelkasten, but please don't transfer all of your notes from other app. You don't need to waste so much time trying to transfer all of your notes from one app to another. Right now, your goal is to just experiment and see if that method works for you or not. Focus on learning new ideas and connecting them together. Experiment for a couple of weeks or months. And only after you feel like this method works for you, you can finally transfer all of your notes and use it for your future projects. Note-taking is a very personal and subjective experience. Something that might work for me might not work for you, so don't feel like Zettelkasten is the perfect method for you. Just experiment and see what works and what doesn't. You can even change Zettelkasten a little bit to suit your needs. You can combine multiple note-taking methods and take a couple of concepts from Zettelkasten and combine it with the pair method. It's not about the name of the note-taking method or who invented it. Ultimately, it's about if it works for you or not. So I hope you will try Zettelkasten out. I personally enjoy it a lot. Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate your support. I'll see you in the next video.